The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Bronx Roots with Michael Preminger and David Hubler. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The two gentlemen from the Bronx are here. Half from the Bronx. My grandparents lived there, and I spent buku time up there. I'm from Queens, and they let me sit in. David,
Yes.
Michael, thank you for letting me sit in.
We're making you an honorary Bronxite.
I couldn't be more honored, believe me.
Yeah. Well, you could be, but you probably won't be.
That it would be impossible. I learned from this, all these very many months of doing this, the key is Mashalou Park.
Right, Mashalou Parkway.
Not Meshuggah Parkway.
Yeah.
Meshuggah Parkway was across the street.
Yeah, that's right.
There should have been one.
All right. Got the World Cup going on. Michael was watching it this morning. How'd that go?
Well, you want to know the score? Is that all right?
Yeah. Give us the score. This won't be on for a few days.
Oh, well, France will beat Croatia 4-2.
Oh, okay.
That's a very high-scoring game for a soccer match.
Soccer, yeah.
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 I mean, you get past two, and it's a rout.
One thing, people say it's a low scoring in soccer, but, you could have a 14-7 game in football, and nobody talks about it being particularly low scoring. And that's
a good point. That's true. I never thought of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a 2-1 game if you look at
it. It is, right. It's a 2-1 game, exactly.
Yeah, right, exactly. Oh, I'm outside, so that's
better.
It's either an airplane or it better be an airplane.
Better be one of ours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, there he goes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
David, you had an interesting article to refer to. George Will wrote, and we basically have baseball in our blood. Good time to plug your book, David.
Yeah.
Praise.
Yeah, and George has a copy of it, too. We were talking about George Will's column in Sunday's Washington Post, where as a conservative columnist, he would headline his piece, "Don't fix baseball even if it's broken." So it sort of goes along with his conservative philosophy. But I don't know. We've talked about a lot of these things, and we do sound like old curmudgeons when we say we prefer the old game, the old Yankee Stadium, the old this, the old that. But there are a lot of things that are good about the current game. I mean, the players are probably the best I can think of, as far as I'm concerned. The quality of the play has never been better.
Athletically, incredible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
things on the headline. I watch MLB.com in the morning, or MLB TV, whatever they call it, and I see highlight films. It's like the year. In past, you'd watch it, you get the highlight films of the whole year, and you'd go, "Oh, these are tremendous catches. It's the best."
Yeah.
That every day they have highlight films. Previous nights where you go, "Holy Toledo." Seeing jumps and slides and
the shortstops going into the hole and then jumping up in the air, turning around and jumping and throwing the guy out. Those plays are incredible.
They are. You're right.
Catching it and then the throws, and then you have first baseman. It's got to be. Some of them are
the ball out,
Gold Glove.
It's.
Well, it's also, look at some of the great outfielders.
But it's still a beautiful, beautiful game.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Play around second base with the double play combo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you can always see that, when after the second base and the shortstop will play together for several years, it is like a ballet. You can see the difference between when a sub is playing one of the other positions and they don't go as smoothly. But the thing that I find the most beautiful of all is a great, especially in center field, a great outfield catch. I mean, getting back to the Bronx roots for a second, the old Yankee Stadium, and I think some of the other ballparks had it too, but what always impressed me is after, in the old stadium for a good number of years, I think into the 60s or so, the fans in the lower box seats were allowed to leave the stadium after the game by walking onto the field, not onto the infield, but walk on the outfield grass and exit through the center field exits, which they would open at the end of the game. And they had the ushers lined up along the first and third baselines just so nobody could run on there and disrupt the infield. But I would go out there, and I love to do this. I would go out there and I would stand approximately where Mantle would be standing, and I'd look up and I'd see this magnificent high edifice, three tiers high, and I'm saying to myself, how in the world could anyone, because you could hardly see home plate from out there, how in the world would anybody not just catch a ball, but track one down? The ball is so small, and it's coming from such a distance away, and these guys run them, and they run it down, and they make these magnificent catches at full speed.
Sometimes where they're just parallel to the ground. Right?
Well, not just parallel, but even just a great running catch.
Oh yeah. Oh.
I was reading that Stan Cohn's book that when we had Stan on that time talking about the Yankee dynasty of 36 to 39, and he talks about a catch that DiMaggio made in his rookie year, where again it was an over-the-shoulder catch, and he said everybody remembers Willie Mays' catch like that at the Polo Grounds in the '54 World Series, but DiMaggio's catch was in an ordinary game, but the idea of just catching a ball that's hit toward you at that speed, at that height, that small P coming at you, in a mountain of white seats and people, and I don't know how they do it. I think it's one of the greatest achievements in sports.
Yeah. Also, got to say something. You mentioned DiMaggio, and any catch by DiMaggio. If you look at the size of the gloves that were used in those days, and without the deep pockets and the hinged flaps on the catcher's mitts and what have you, it was a different game because of that too.
Yeah, my father had a glove that an old glove that I used to see a lot, and it didn't even have the webbing between the thumb and the forefinger.
Oh wow!
So you caught it right in the palm of your hand.
Those old. I mean, when we're going back to the 20s.
Well,
that's the thing.
Even the late 40s and the early 50s. If you look at old Yankee. They have a Yankee-Dodger 1952 World Series game, Game 7, on YouTube. And in its entirety, Mel Allen announcing, it's really terrific. But if you look at the gloves, and you see one of the reasons why infield play is improved is the size of the gloves and the shape of the gloves comparatively.
But apparently now they even have them set up so that the infielders' gloves are not as long and large as the outfielders' gloves, because the infielders need to be able to get the ball out.
Out of the pocket
faster.
Out of the glove really quickly for the transfer for the double play.
But I still, and as we've talked before on other programs, it's still the best game ever invented, as far as I'm concerned.
No question. No question.
And you soccer fans can take that.
Right.
Well, now, how do you feel? It's not as good. How do you feel about Chinese checkers?
Red Chinese checkers or Taiwanese checkers?
The problem is you play the game, you want to play another game in an hour.
Hey, there you go.
Oh, yes.
Ah. Thank you. I set you up for that one.
Yes, you did. I struck out. I missed out. Ralph had the proper answer on that one.
Yes.
I guess it's sort of like mahjong, huh?
I had the all-time compliment this week when David Hubler liked one of my lines on Facebook, and didn't correct the spelling, didn't correct the grammar, or anything. What did I? Something about you're not a schmuck because you support
Trump.
Donald Trump. You're a schmuck. How did it go?
I don't remember, frankly, but I just sort of put a like.
Maybe I'll try to pull it up on the YouTube. I wrote a meme on it. We are terribly divided, just to get off the subject for a second, in this country, to the point where I don't know if they're going to have to change the system. That'll take some revolution, hopefully a
peaceful one.
Revolution. But we can't go on as a country being this split up.
No.
I do agree. I think it's Michael Moore said a few weeks ago on Bill Maher, he said, there's a feeling not so much of anger, but despair.
Despair, right.
And it really is, it's
I mean,
bad.
I get angry at the things he does, but in terms of rectifying all this, as you say, Ralph, it's a feeling of despair. Where do you start? Where do you start? I mean, you want to change the laws, right? Well, first you have to change the lawmakers, because these guys aren't going to change anything. And how do you know the next group in isn't going to do this? I mean, it's all status quo. Once you get elected, you want to stay there.
Do you feel like I do that it's almost like stop the line, change the labels from party to party, from every 4 years, playing good guy, bad guy. Trump notwithstanding, and here's the line I wrote, you're not a schmuck because you support Trump. You support Trump because you're a schmuck.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I did like that one. Yes.
But
by the way, Trump is probably the first president of the United States ever to use that word in public. Schmuck.
Has he used it? Yeah.
He did. Yeah, he said, all those schmucks. You know, one of his rambling diatribes. I guess talking to the faithful. And I said,
if I wasn't so clear that his mother and his wife are immigrants, or his mother was an immigrant and his wife is an immigrant, I could probably rationalize his thinking, or just say, well, some people think along those lines. But how do you justify his thought process? If his mother was an immigrant, for instance, who reputedly came over here with nothing, literally barefoot almost, and he doesn't have any respect for people who are escaping tyranny, where do you go from that? How do you talk to a guy who's got all the money in the world now, all the power in the world? His body language in front of the Queen, I was going to say the Queen Mother. She old enough to be the Queen Mother. She's a 90-year-old woman, Queen of England, and he stands in front of her.
I know. He walks in front of her.
Has the this look like he's pushing her aside in a way. She looked at him like, oh, my God, we should have fought harder in the river.
Yes. Well, you know what I've been saying? I said, now it's the Brits' turn to protest against the tyranny. And then it's sort of turnabout is fair play.
Right. They must be historians must be, putting their tongue in their cheek. What would Bernard Shaw say about this? It's just crazy, absolutely nuts. And I think you hate to think, well, somebody's going to take it upon themselves, the inner sanctums. If you read a novel, what other way is it going to all end? It's good theater. Got to give it that.
Well, the latest is that he's insisting now that many of the protests in Britain were pro-Trump protests.
Oh, of course.
And so they've shown several pictures. One group of protesters was standing on a street. There were about 5 or 6 of them with placards, and a couple of bobbies looking on at them from the curb, and nobody paying any attention to them.
Pro-Trump.
Yeah.
It just comes to mind. I've got to talk about something that you mentioned about health care, socialized health care in Britain. My parents, my father was a diamond dealer and traveled back and forth between the United States and London in the early 50s. And socialized medicine back then in Britain wasn't all that great. I realize that what we have now is unaffordable, so socialized medicine looks much better by comparison. But if one could afford it and they lived in Britain, they go to America for American care. I don't know how much that's improved. I know American care has not improved. It's gotten worse. So it's like the Bell's curve is going to meet each other somewhere along the line. But socialized medicine, either it's come a long way or we've regressed so that it looks comparatively good.
Well, keep in mind that the Brits introduced the National Health Service, which is their health system, just after World War II, when the country was in terrible economic condition from coming through the war. And by the mid-50s, they still hadn't recovered completely. So in the 50s, I would say you can't judge their system today by what it was when they first instituted it. And it's interesting, too, that the Tory government, the Conservatives, had just come to power, and this was instituted after Churchill had and the Tories had been thrown out just following the war, so the Liberal Party, Labour Party, came in and instituted this national health system. And of course, it had bumps and starts and fits and starts, just like Obamacare. Now, Obamacare probably would have been on much better footing had Clinton won the election. No doubt about it in my mind, because these are the kinds of massive programs that really take jiggering, and especially under our federal system, where 50 states have a lot to say in how their citizens are treated and taken care of. So, what's happening now is it's what do they call that when you sort of let something die by not feeding it? That's what they're doing now with our system, which I thought had some wonderful aspects to it. It had some problems, but anytime you can pass a law that says insurance companies cannot hold a previous illness against you, That's a wonderful
option. Absolutely. Pre-existing conditions.
Yes. And now they're trying to reverse that too.
They're trying to reverse everything that's been done.
Everything. That's right. They couldn't do it legislatively, but now they're doing it through executive order and trickery. Because it's all for the...
What gets me is that insurance companies can withhold treatments from people that would literally change their lives.
That's right.
If it weren't for their financial greed. And you say one thing about being rich, you can buy health care.
That's right. That's for sure.
If you have any kind of disposable income whatsoever, it separates one from the poor and can add years of quality to your life. So the people that in legislature that are making these decisions have their plans in place. David, you pointed out that they're contributory, but nevertheless they're available.
Yes.
People out there can't even afford it if it were available, and it isn't available. So we have the rich making the decisions, representing us. We have millionaires in Congress representing the average people in their
It's not only the rich.
They identify with the problems.
Yeah. Well, it's not only the rich. Look at the situation here in Virginia. We had 400,000 uninsured Virginians, mostly in the southwestern part of the state, the most rural area. It's a coal mining area. It's the depressed area in some spots. And for years, the state legislature refused to go along with the Obamacare program, whereby they would pay 90% of the cost of getting health care to these very poor people. The Republican-led Senate and House of Representatives, what do they call it now? Anyway, both houses turned it down flat. The Senate especially, because that's where the problem. They just, even if the House delegates had passed it, it would have died in the Senate. And it almost died this time too, except for a couple of senators who finally saw the light. Republican senators, state senators, finally saw the light and went along with the Democrats. And now, for the very first time, those people are insured. That's 400,000 people who would have to rely on emergency room visits and, and then stiff them on the bills. Obviously, they couldn't afford to pay. And that only brings up the head cost. That brings up the health care costs for everybody else, because the hospitals have to make up that lost revenue somehow.
Right.
We are lucky, Michael. We live in California, where they really treat healthcare with a lot more respect. We have a program called Medi-Cal.
Yes.
Which really is the gem of the nation in terms of healthcare. So, or emergency healthcare for people who just can't afford it. But we're not a very social country anymore.
Well, you see, there, Ralph, what you raised that issue, that exemplifies what I was saying. That you have 50 states with 50 separate programs. It's hard to, suddenly create a blanket program that will cover all 50 states and their peculiar problems and stuff. It wasn't like that in Britain, and that's another thing that's different. The British health, there's 50 million people in all of Britain. That's a lot different than 350 million people. You're trying to service, and the size of the country is different too, of course, hugely different. I mean, in Britain, you can still get your mail delivered twice a day, and if you mail something in the morning, no matter where it's going to in the British Isles, they get it the next morning. But it's because the country's so much smaller. There's no trick to that.
Okay, I have another question for you, gentlemen. Is it true that people vote with their pocketbooks? And if so, is it true that our economy is going along pretty well under Trump? And that might be a big factor in the upcoming election?
That's a good question. I am not an expert in this field at all, but it from what I read or hear, the economy, well, it seems to. Somebody said yesterday, though, this young girl from New York who beat that 10-term.
Yeah.
Yes, from Queens, as a matter of fact.
Oh, is it Queens? Yeah, well, yeah.
28-year-old kid, really.
Well, it's a strange district because it's partly in the Bronx and partly in Queens, and that's really odd. I mean, it's got to jump over the water there for that. I don't know why I mean, it must be gerrymandering or gerrymandering.
Maybe this show has been an influence in that sense. My being from Queens and.
Right. Yes.
But she was saying something about that it was, it's 4% unemployment, but it's because there are a lot of people not looking for work.
Right.
Something like that.
And the jobs may be jobs that are basically subsidized in food stamps by the government because they're like Walmart. They don't pay enough. So people can live. They're going to work for 40 hours. You'd expect to be able to live and not have 12 roommates and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You're working 40 hours. So,
well, you talked about having to do 2-3 jobs. The new program that the current administration is seeking to implement. In order to qualify for a welfare payments, you have to be working. Well, a lot of people, and you don't have to be working full time, but it's got to be like a minimum of 20 or 30 hours a week. Well, if you work 20, 30 hours a week, you're not getting any health benefits at all. You also, at that point, you can't make a go of it. Look at all the people who are currently on welfare. It's not that many of them do not want to work. It's that they can't work, and they can't work for any number of reasons, including the fact that they may have an elderly parent to take care of full time because they can't afford to bring in full time health care, and they have children, young children that they have to take care of. I mean,
child care. You go to work, you leave your kid in a daycare center, and that could eat up half your salary.
That's exactly right. Absolutely. So you're caught between two polar opposites. You can't work. I mean, the whole notion, I must say, it goes way back. The Republicans were dead set against Social Security when that was introduced. They fought against it. You tell me what is wrong with having a system that sets up a basic wage for you or basic payment for you when you retire, because you're paying into the system. The great fallacy that the Republicans try to push on people is that this system, the Social Security system, is going to just send the national debt sky high as soon as all of these baby boomers retire, because all this money that's going to be flowing to them will require loans and the government to spend money that it doesn't have. Well, that's not so. I mean, the money that you get from your Social Security is money you paid in.
It's not an entitlement.
Right.
It's your money.
It's your money. And, up until a number of years ago, you didn't pay any income tax on that money. Then some bright economists figured out that, well, let's say you contributed X number of dollars for 30 years, you work X times 30 was how much you put in. So once you reached X plus 30 plus 1, the 1 and then all ensuing dollars could be taxed because you didn't earn those dollars. So they started taking income tax out of Social Security, which means that it's sort of
that's
like a
slap in the face to the working person.
Well, they've been doing that for years now. That's standard now. So it's almost like one of these water mills where the water runs down and then it picks it up and goes right and runs back down again and up again and down again. But it's not a drain on the national debt. The national debt's gone up simply because of the tax cuts that this administration. $1.4 billion, I think, was the figure of additional debt. And nothing to do with Social Security. But for some reason, there's a whole bunch of people, a bunch of Americans out there that think it's not right for people to have a way of saving their own money and getting it back when they retire. And if you look at what industry is doing, they're doing away with pensions. They're cutting back on all kinds of salary incentives. The only ones who are making money out there are in your area, Ralph. All those guys in Silicon Valley. They're sitting pretty.
And it really isn't an advantage that they are to the working person because the price of housing has gone to the point where it's craziness.
Oh, yeah.
In the Bay Area, and the middle class are really being forced out in this country.
Yes, and that's what's happening in these cities that go in for gentrification. They're forcing out the lower.
Right,
and, you know, the great experiment of those high-rise, what do they call them? You know,
tenements or
not tenements. No, I mean that's the old.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
like
condos.
Condos.
No, not the condos, but the big projects. That's what I meant. That was the word. Projects. The big projects that New York City and other cities built in like the 50s and 60s. They're just vertical slums. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Very sad. Very sad.
So what's
an uplifting story, Michael, off the top of your head.
Okay, an uplifting story was last night. I'm turning the channels, and I forgot which network it is, but we have, I say we, there's so many, you know, ones that show old shows.
Right.
Now, we have Me TV, which is memorable TV, and it's sitcoms, and like I watch Columbo on Saturday nights. I do, and they're just as good now as they were then, and he was great. So I also get Johnny Carson.
Oh.
And
has you watched the one you're on? Has that come up?
Well, here's what happened. I'm watching it last night, and Bruce Dern is on, and Carson, they finish, and Dern leaves, and then they go to commercial, and I hate commercials, so I turn the channel to just watch something else with 60 seconds. Because sometimes it lists who the guests are.
Uh-huh.
It did not last night. It didn't. So I turned back, and as I turned back, he says, "This next bright young comic," Mike, and I went, "Whoa!" And there I was.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
There I was.
What a neat experience.
Yeah.
How about that?
It just happened to turn as he was introducing me. Yeah.
Do you have a copy of that at all?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. I was just wondering.
It was fun to watch.
Were you good?
I tell you, this is what an idiot I am. Not an idiot. I swear to God, you're going to think I belong in a home. Now, this show took place like 40 years ago. But as he mentioned my name, I got nervous. I swear to you. I'm going,
no.
I hope I'm going to do okay. It's 40 years.
No, that's great. I love that. I love that
the
story.
The first minute or so, I actually turned off the audio because I didn't want to hear if I didn't get a laugh. I was so nervous. I mean, that's great. And then I said, oh, all right, let me put the audio back on. Maybe I'm doing okay, because I didn't remember. I know I did okay. I did fine, and then I had a real good panel. I went and sat down.
Who was there?
He let you sit down at the panel. Now, that's a sign that
yes.
he liked you.
I did that. I did that. Not the first time I was on, but every time after that, I got to sit down.
Oh. How many times were you on?
I was going to say 110. No, I was only... David Brenner was on 154 times.
Was he really?
Yeah. I was on about a dozen times or so.
Well, that's terrific. I know Robert Klein was on, too. Didn't he sub for him sometimes, too?
Yeah, he did. So did Brenner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The big thing I was impressed with yesterday was how good I looked. I'm sitting there going, what a nice-looking young fella.
Yeah.
Remember, I had hair on the top of my head. It was delightful.
Were you wearing bell-bottom
pants? Were your parents alive when you were on that show?
What?
Were your parents alive to see this?
Yes.
What was how did they handle it, and how cool was that for them in the neighborhood?
Well, I think I told you the story. Well, first of all, my father would always go AAA, and not the Automobile Association.
Oh,
his reaction was, you got AAA. And my mother, there was no specific thing, but I know I've told you this story, that after the first time I was on, when you say the neighborhood, yeah, I did tell you this, and I hate repeating myself, but
please repeat.
The next day after
better story.
The next day after I was on the first time, I went up to the Bronx, took the subway up to the Bronx, because I was living in Manhattan, and I went with my mother to the fish store, Sam's Fish Market. And I go inside with my mother, and a woman there says, "Oh, Michael, I saw you on TV yesterday. You were wonderful. Oh." And to my mother, "You must be so proud." And my mother, yes. And she turned to the fish guy, and she says, "Did you see Michael yesterday?" And he said, "Yeah, he was in here, bought halibut." And that's when everything kind of flattened out, right? That's fame is very fleeting. Yeah, he was in here, he bought some halibut. Oh, well, thanks. That put me in my place.
On the show.
The fish guy. Fish guy.
Yeah, I was wearing, you're right, David, when you ask, I'm pretty sure I was wearing bell bottoms, and a brown jacket. Oh, and then when you asked about hair, I still remember it, and I saw it last night. I was very proud of my answer. Carson, I said something about I'm losing some of my hair, and Carson, yeah, I noticed you're losing in the back a little bit. I said, yeah. He says, have you tried anything to stop it? I said, well, I tried hair vitamins, but they fall out when you bend over. Carson, that got Carson big time. He laughed.
Oh, I like that, yeah.
Big laugh from the audience.
Was he at all personable with the guests before or after the show, Carson?
Not that much before. Maybe if we knew people well, but usually not not that much. And afterwards, again, I think it depended. If you remember, he would get up at the end of the show and come around the desk and talk to the guests as the credits rolled. That would often be the case. So, it was fun. He never said, "Hi, let's go for a drink," but he was fine. They all were. Merv Griffin was terrific, very personable.
I love that show. That was such a terrific show. Afternoons.
Yeah.
Merv had a way of relating to the guests that it looked like everybody was having fun at the panel.
I agree with you. Yeah, he was. Same with Mike Douglas, I think. I think they were both. It was more of a relaxing show to do, but then again, Tonight Show was the show, so you felt the pressure on yourself.
Sure, yeah.
And, but it was fun to see myself when I actually looked like a person.
Well, you still look like a person. You're just a little well-aged.
Yeah, exactly.
Like wine. Like they say, like wine, yeah. Yeah, I remember I watched the Mike Douglas, I think it was Mike Douglas show. One time, I never watched it, and I was watching it, and they had on Neil Diamond. And Neil Diamond was giving Merv Griffin a fencing lesson.
Oh.
And he was explaining, Merv Griffin was explaining that Neil Diamond had been quite a fencer. And this is like at the height of his career. He wasn't really, or just before he reached the pinnacle, let's say. He was on his way up. And I thought I recognized him from his face on TV, but he had been a great fencer at NYU. NYU in those days had a world-class fencing coach and a very fine team that went to and nobody ever went to really watch the NCAA fencing tournament. But, 13 people showed up and they were all parents. But
come on, Cousin Bill, we're going to that fencing fight.
Yeah, I got 2 tickets. Am I lucky?
Don't stick yourself in that goddamn sword, for Christ's sake.
So he went, so he was on, and that's the first time that I realized that he was a singer. As most people would say, gee, it's the first time I recognized he was a fencer. To me, it was the first time he was a singer.
He was a fencer.
Yeah, I remembered him as a fencer. I just remembered that particular show for that particular reason.
Well, I'll tell you how I remember Merv. Merv had a guy on that you guys may remember. He was Jackie Vernon.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Very dry guy. I love Jackie Vernon. Anyway, Jackie's sitting there, and Charo comes on. And Charo's like about 23, and she's going with either married to or dating Xavier Cougard, who's 60 or 70 years old or whatever. Big disparagement in their ages.
It gives us all hope.
Yes, exactly. So Merv is talking, and he doesn't know how to quite word the question. He says, do you ever worry about, when you're making love that somebody, and Jackie Vernon says, well, if she dies, she dies.
Oh, yes. That's
It just broke me up. I was like 14 years old, whatever.
By the way, Mike, when we did the Carson show at that time was done in New York, I know when we went to see Leno together, they taped it like at about 5:00 in the afternoon.
Right.
But what time did they do the taping in New York? I assume it was a tape, right?
Around the same time. Oh, you know what? Oh boy, now I'm trying to think. Oh my goodness,
I mean, they could have taped it at about 5:00 and shown it at 11. But
that's right. They wouldn't have shown it live, so.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I don't remember. I don't know if maybe it was at 8:00, so that it would be. If they did it at 8, it would be 5:00 in California, right? Yeah.
Right.
It would be 11. It would
they
be
wouldn't
11
have done
o'clock.
They wouldn't have done it live. Oh, I don't remember.
Okay.
Oh, be a son of a gun. But the show last night that was on, I'm almost sure it was already in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
He had come out here around in 72, approximately somewhat around there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Michael, if you have these Carson appearances taped or videoed or whatever, get them on YouTube. Find someone with the ability to put them on YouTube. It shouldn't be difficult at all. So there's a permanent record there.
Yeah, I think people post things on YouTube all the time.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be too difficult.
True. That's true.
And then
guys.
give a plug for this show.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it should.
Bronx Roots. And,
Bronx Roots.
It is on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The stars are David Hubler and Michael Preminger. And I'm Ralph Tyko, and I have fun with you guys. So thank you again for a pleasurable Sunday, and we'll be back next week.
All right.
Bye. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Adios.